Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and honestly, today's episode should be a dream for every single business owner when it comes to your marketing and sales efforts, because I want to say that this is a little bit of a tease into what the future holds, but the truth is, this is what the present holds. You are about to be mind blown by the state of technology and what you can do to ramp up your marketing and sales, and a lot of it is being spearheaded by a very brilliant entrepreneur who has started a business that essentially will send an AI agent out into the world for you, will crawl the internet across Reddit, across LinkedIn, across Facebook groups to find people who actually want to buy your stuff right now. Let me introduce you to today's guest and fellow entrepreneur and the person who's making all of this possible. His name is Anish Chopra. Anish is a former AI engineer turned founder, currently building his company Intently to help businesses find customers when they're actually in the market for their product. They deploy personalized AI agents to continuously monitor those online platforms that I teased about, searching for real-time buying signals. If you're curious, what is a buying signal? How does AI make sense of that? How do I help it understand my business? Anish is going to shed a lot of light on that in today's episode, as far as, and in addition to surfacing high-quality leads, which enables teams to find customers while they're actively in the market. B2B buying behavior is shifting, and cold outbound is becoming less and less effective, and that's why Intently steps in to help businesses find warm, qualified leads that convert at a significantly higher rate. I'm personally very excited about this one, as I'm sure you all are, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Anish Chopra. All right, Anish, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Heck yes, I'm excited to learn about your business, all the cool things that you guys are doing. I am mind blown when I come across all the ways that you're enabling businesses to grow faster. But before we get to the business, take us beyond the bio. Who's Anish? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, so, I have been a huge just like tech enthusiast and builder my entire life. I got into coding when I was like 10 years old, and I was, building apps, around like 12. And so just kind of my entire life, I've been obsessed with technology. And so, eventually went on to study software engineering at university, and then moved out here to the Bay Area as quickly as I could. I just love the startup energy here, and you get to meet so many amazing entrepreneurs here. And I think just kind of being in this culture is really what motivated me to start my own business.
Yeah, I love that. Obviously, I'm a big fan of your business. I've teased listeners just a little bit about the powers that Intently brings. Introduce listeners who haven't seen it just yet. What is Intently? What are all the capabilities? Because we're going to go deep on this stuff today.
Yeah, so basically with Intently, we use AI agents to monitor online platforms, whether it be Reddit or LinkedIn or Twitter, and we look for real-time buying signals to help businesses catch customers when they're actually in the market for your product. And so these buying signals can be all different types of things. They can just be, discussions related to your industry that could be good marketing opportunities for you. It could be people that are actively asking for recommendations about products that your business could be a good fit for, which creates a really good outbound sales opportunity there as well. Basically, the platform is very flexible, and it lets you, as the user of the platform, decide what type of signal do you want to find across these platforms, and then we go find those for you in real time, and we'll actually send you real-time notifications so that you can actually catch these customers at the right time with the right context. What we've been finding is that when you are able to engage with people, not only with just the right context, but at the right time, you can get significantly better conversions. For example, like one of our earliest customers, he was using like a cold outbound sales platform, was converting at less than 1%. In his first month of using Intently, he was able to bump that up to a 20% conversion rate, which was an awesome, first validation that, our platform really works, and that we just now need to go and add as many capabilities as possible to find any type of signal across any platform on the internet.
Yeah, it's so cool, Anish, because oftentimes when we have these conversations about AI and about different tech companies and SaaS companies, a lot of people exclude their businesses and their industries and they think, oh, well, I'm not in the tech space. How's it going to help me? But honestly, when I came across Intently, I thought about my local HVAC guy who came to my house, installed a smart thermostat for me, and he told me the biggest problem that he has in business, which so many people have: I don't know how to find people like you. He's like, I wish I could do these smart thermostat installations all day long. I told him, I love Reddit. I was like, go to Reddit, go to the Tampa subreddit, go to the Bradenton subreddit, go to the St. Petersburg subreddit, and just see when people are asking questions about this. How many next door conversations are there about smart thermostats? So, Anish, are we there? Is it too much to ask for an HVAC guy to have an AI agent crawling these places and saying, hey, Joe wants this service, Susan wants this service? Is that where we already are with current technology?
Yes, and I'm actually so glad you brought that up because there has been a lot of interest from more traditional SMBs and service-based industries, exactly like this HVAC person that you just said. And as I've been talking with all of these different types of entrepreneurs, one thing that I learned recently was that apparently Facebook groups is actually a really big source of leads for a lot of these types of businesses. Lots of local communities that rely on Facebook groups for recommendations about who to go for these types of services. So that's actually a platform we're bringing on now to support these types of industries. But like you said, we've already seen platforms like Reddit do a really good job at helping businesses like that find customers.
Yeah, it's so cool. And even the more you talk about it, Anish, I thought your business was a no-brainer before, but the more we actually talk about it, I'm just like, I went into my local Facebook group for the neighborhood that I live in, and I asked, who's got a recommendation for an electrician to install a Tesla charger? How come not a single electrician was reading that post and reaching out to me individually? They would have closed that sale. So talk to us about how Intently knows to search for these. When you talk about these buying signals, is it's something that the end consumer, that your customer, programs in and they say, this is what we're looking for? Or does the AI have the ability to understand context of their business and identify buying signals based across all the data that I'm sure you're sitting on? How's that side of it work?
Yeah, so it's actually a little bit of both. We try to make our onboarding process as seamless as possible. And so if you have like a website for your business, all you have to do is just put in your website and we will kind of put together a whole setup of like what we think are the relevant signals to find for you, which platforms make the most sense for you to search on. And we'll basically give you just a set of recommendations about like, this is what we think we should find for you. These are the signals that we think are the most relevant. And so with just a few button clicks, you can just immediately get started with the platform. That being said, we obviously built it to be very customizable. So you can add your own signals. Often we see signals like, people actively looking for a recommendation for this type of, business, or people complaining about a competitive business, for example. So we typically brainstorm a lot of signals around that. But we've already seen people get pretty creative in terms of other signals that they would want to look for. For example, like we've seen lots of people that create signals about like hiring. So if someone's hiring for a specific role where those role requirements could overlap with maybe what your product that you're selling does, then that could create a good selling opportunity to kind of sell that person on your product instead of them having to hire a whole full-time person to accomplish that same task. So yeah, like I said, a little bit of both. We suggest a bunch of things, but you can also go and customize it and look for whatever you want as well. And then AI basically gives us that awesome opportunity to go and do all the busy work for you, go search all these platforms and understand intent on your behalf. So we're no longer having to rely on like keyword searches anymore. Now you can literally create a signal, for example, that says, I want to find all the people that are complaining about this specific problem, or I want to find all the people that are actively looking for this type of solution, and our AI agents will go find that automatically for you.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I think it's such an important distinction to make about the power of Intently is that so many people are used to, Chat GPT or Gemini or Claude, whatever front-facing model it is that they use. And I feel like we're starting to societally conflate what a large language model is versus a workflow or an automation versus a true AI agent. We've talked about it at a really high level before on this show in some episodes, Anish, but I'd love for you to really clearly differentiate those three for listeners, because this is that next wave. I'm convinced that the next 12 months and beyond, it's the agentic AI that we're all going to see that unlocks new doors for our businesses, as opposed to just this early frontier that more and more end consumers are used to? What are the differences there?
Yeah, so the LLM at the core is what provides that raw intelligence that we need to unlock use cases like what we're doing with Intently, and so that's where ChatGPT comes into play, where it's basically that first chat interface to this LLM. You provided some input, it'll give you a really awesome answer, and agents take that to the next step, where now they can use this intelligence engine to automatically do things on your behalf. So in the case of Intently, for example, we use these LLMs to automatically go analyze all the things that we see online on these different platforms. And we basically provide all this context as an input saying, this is the business that we want to find leads for. These are the signals that we're looking for. Does this data set, like does this social post, for example, match this intent for this business? Is this a good selling opportunity for this business? And so the beauty of agents is that they can act autonomously on your behalf. You don't need to constantly be chatting with it like you do with just typical chat platforms like ChatGPT. It takes it to the next step of actually doing things on your behalf, and then engaging with you at that right moment. So in the case of Intently, agents are automatically looking across these platforms for selling opportunities, and then they send these leads back to your dashboard so that now you can just log into our web app and you can see all the things that our agents have found on your behalf.
Yeah, it's so cool. Let's roll with an example. Let's say that I own a web design agency, because I've been there. In 2012, when I started my web design agency, I realized there's a lot of people in the world that need websites. I have no idea how to find them. And of course, we could go the traditional marketing channels and ask ourselves the question of who's your ideal customer? Where are they? Then I have to game plan how to get in front of them in that place. But obviously, Intently is going to do so much of that work for me. What's the result there? Let's say it identifies, Anish needs a new website. What do I do with that data? Are there steps that I have to take? Are there steps that Intently is going to take? I'd love to hear what happens from that point.
Yeah, so what we are, trying to accomplish with Intently is essentially being almost like the cursor for sales and marketing, where we use the platform to help you guide you through every step of that sales and marketing process. And so in that example of like a web designer, you would start off creating your account and probably create some signals about, looking for people that are actively looking for a web designer, or people that are struggling with any type of any of the web design tools, or maybe even just people complaining about not liking their website, how it's not converting, how it doesn't look nice. You can go from those very obvious signals to the more subtle ones like that as well. And then when you log into the platform, you will see all of the people across Reddit, LinkedIn, Twitter, for example, who match those signals you're looking for. And then you would just be able to click on it and we'll actually draft a message for you. And you can actually customize the rules for how you like to draft messages, what works and what doesn't. And so with just like one click, you can copy and paste that in and send that message to that person, so that it's just a very seamless process to go from discovering a potential lead to actually acting on them.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I'm going to call out many listeners and many entrepreneurs with this next question, Anish, and I'm excited to see where you take it. I feel like, having been an entrepreneur for 18 years now, I've seen such an important shift in the world of marketing from inbound to outbound. For a long time, we really glamorized inbound marketing as the Gary V's of the world. We're telling people, post 30 pieces of content every single day and your clients will find you. And a lot of people fell into that trap, and they spend so much time trying to grow a social media following and a content marketing plan that with SEO brings people to them. That inbound marketing, of course, so many people dream about it, but the truth is that I found over 18 years, you can actually just proactively go after the right customers for you. And it sounds like you've really embraced that as well. But a lot of people probably have some stick points there where they say, Anish, what do I message them when I reach out to them? What's their response going to be? Is it unsolicited? I mean, they don't necessarily know me or want to hear from me. Obviously, there's a tactful way to go about it. Talk to us about that approach, because I've seen the people who are crushing the most online these days, they're fully embracing outbound.
Yeah. So I would answer this in like two ways. One is, one of the things I really like about how we think about outbound when using Intently is that you are catching people when they actually have a problem that you can solve for them, right? So we are not the platform to spam thousands or even hundreds of thousands of emails into the void, hoping to convert at, less than 1% or whatever. We are trying to find you people who like you can actually solve their problem at that very moment. And so what we found is that people are a lot more receptive to those types of messages when you actually catch them at that right moment. And I've experienced that myself, where I personally hate just like cold emails and cold DMs that have like absolutely no context and just terrible timing. And I almost always, block them or just don't respond to them. But the few times I have actually responded to these types of messages is when they have caught me at the right time, when they actually can solve my problem at the moment, and they're not just pitching me on something that I had no interest in ever trying. And so it's because of that we've seen much better conversions on our platform as well. So that I would say that would be like one part of my answer. But separately from that, I would say that I definitely still 100% believe in both inbound and outbound efforts. I think they both have their place. And like, even I would say most of our customers today have actually come inbound. We have a lot of our own inbound marketing efforts, and a lot of that is actually powered by Intently, because Intently is not only just for finding those outbound sales opportunities, but you can also use it to actually find those amazing marketing opportunities. And I've used it myself as a way to find the best possible opportunities to promote Intently in the comments of a Reddit thread, for example, or not even just direct promotion, but oftentimes I'll find good opportunities for me to just add value to a conversation on Twitter, for example, or on LinkedIn. And often what happens is that people like my content, that they end up clicking on my profile, they'll see I'm working on Intently, then they'll check out Intently and then sign up. So I think both of those strategies have their place.
Ooh, that is some really cool behind the scenes. I really love that last strategy that you just shared with us, because a lot of it is just joining the conversation, which Intently is doing the hard part of finding those conversations. Anish, you really take me back to 2016 when this podcast started. I didn't know how to promote a podcast. And so what I was doing was just answering entrepreneurial related questions on Quora back in the day. And people were always asking, how do I start my business? How do I make my first 5K? I was just answering those questions. To your point, it wasn't even promotional, but when they click through to my profile, if they hopefully liked my answer, it naturally led to my business. So I really appreciate that double-sided approach to that, and that really balanced approach. Talk to us about when it comes to that outreach. I can't help but think about the local electricians who missed the chance with me, who should have reached out to me. What does that outreach look like? Obviously, Intently helps us with that, but what does that copy look like? What are the different angles? Because it sounds to me like you have a very organic approach to marketing, and I'm sure that shines through in those outreach messages.
Yeah, so kind of my advice in general to people who use the platform, and even how I've used the platform myself, has always been to just be authentic. Whether you are, promoting your company in the comments, whether you are outreaching to people. Like, I have never, written a comment on Reddit, for example, saying like, pretending to be a user and saying like, hey, like I love Intently. I'm not affiliated with them. You should try it out. Like, those types of things I find don't work as well. But when I'm authentic and I say, hey, I'm the founder of Intently, I think we can help what you're doing, feel free to DM me, I get a lot better responses. And the same thing applies to outbound messages as well, where, I hate the typical just like super salesy message. I just like to be just very, personal, authentic. And I don't even typically pitch on the very first message. I just talk to them, right? I say like, hey, I saw you were, asking about this problem. Like, love to learn a little bit more about what specifically you're working on, or like, how can I help, or something like that. Rather than saying like, hey, you should, try out Intently. I think just kind of having those more natural conversations builds trust before you just start immediately pitching them.
Yeah, I love the way that you view this stuff, Anish. I want to switch gears just a little bit, because I feel like you are very much at the forefront of this next wave of how businesses are going to leverage AI. What has the AI landscape looked like from your vantage point and in your perspective? Because it seems to me like it's changing every single week. What I've just seen over the past week from Google, what they're doing inside of Gemini with VO videos, like those are unbelievable. What 11 Labs is doing with voice cloning and opening up, if you want to create an audiobook now, it's so much easier for authors to do that without needing to read the book themselves. All these changes are happening literally daily and weekly, Anish. How are you staying on top of it? And from your vantage point, how far along are we? What's coming? How good is it where we currently are? Because obviously you're leveraging all of that in what you're building too.
Yeah. So, I mean, to answer your first part of the question about how I stay on top of it, I mean, I will say being in the Bay Area really, really helps with that. Everybody is so in the loop on AI these days. That's pretty much all anybody ever talks about here. And I have a lot of friends who work at OpenAI and Anthropic, so I get to hear a lot of the cool things that they're working on as well. And so I think just generally, I'm also just very interested, obviously, in AI and all the newest, developments. Before starting Intently, like I worked as an AI engineer my entire career, and so generally, I just naturally gravitate towards, reading about the latest and greatest AI models, reading some of the papers that come out. So I would say like that's generally how I keep on top of things. And then in terms of like what's happening, I think we're still so early. I think honestly, AI, the way it's progressing right now, we are in a new almost like phase of human evolution. Like I think this is going to become so big and it's going to change pretty much everything about all of our lives over the next several years. And I'm really excited about it. I think AI has the potential to offer so much value to humanity, and I think it can help us in so many ways. And honestly, probably a ton of ways that I can't even think about right now. But I think you can generally expect it to change pretty much every aspect of your life over the next several years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I found that both personally and professionally. That's why I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, Anish. How have you personally been using it, personally and professionally, been using it behind the scenes, both in growing your business? Obviously, you use Intently for all of the powers we've talked about here today. But beyond that, how are you leveraging it both in business and in life?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you asked me that because I was just chatting with one of our engineers the other day about how I can't believe that people used to build businesses without AI. Like, I can't imagine what it would be like to try to build Intently without AI these days, and not even just as part of the core product, but just around all the workflows I have. So, on the engineering side, we use AI a lot to help us write code. We use it for code reviews. We even use it for project planning because we have AI that integrates with our code base so that we can tell it like, hey, this is the feature we want to build. Help us plan out everything we need to do to actually get that released. And then outside of engineering, I use it a lot for my own like business planning. I use it to help with brainstorming cool content to write about. I use it to help search the web to figure out like what's trending, what's new, what are some exciting things that are happening in the space that we could talk about. I use it to help me like write emails sometimes. I've asked it for input on like my pitch decks. I've even like sent it like screenshots and descriptions of like everything Intently does, and I've asked it to like pretend it's a user and give me some pain points that I think it would have with the platform and what we could do better. So I kind of see AI as this just like this assistant that just helps me with every part of building a business, and it's just there alongside me to provide input whenever I need it to. So we don't use it like completely autonomously, so it's not like we have AI just writing our code for us and we don't look at it or everything, but it's always like in the loop for everything, and that makes us move like 10 times faster than we were able to prior to AI. And then on like the personal side of things, I mean, honestly, similarly, I use it for a lot of just life planning. For example, like I've asked it to help me build out like my gym training schedule, for example, and just like I think I have almost now used it as just like a thought partner. Like I've occasionally turned on voice mode when I'm driving around, and I'll ask it to just answer some questions I have about, I don't know, anything. Or sometimes I even ask it to just teach me something new because, I have 30 minutes and I want to learn something new. So many crazy different ways that I use AI in both personal and work life.
Yes, I so appreciate those insights, Anish. It's good to know I'm not the only one driving around talking to my voice assistant while I'm going. Even, I mean, to the point where even you said just curiosity and learning new things. I was driving down the highway the other day. I live in Florida. It is very much love bug season here. So your windshield gets obliterated. And I just simply asked, tell me about love bugs. Why do they collect on so many windshields? And it's cool that a world of knowledge is at our fingertips. Any bit of curiosity, we can stroke that curiosity and go deeper and get those new ideas, which, thinking about the way that you guys are all using it behind the scenes at Intently, it makes me really curious. I always love asking product-based entrepreneurs this question. How hard is it to manage your future looking roadmap these days? Because you guys can move 10 times faster thanks to AI, but obviously patience and not breaking too many things simultaneously is the name of the game in developing something like what you've built. How do you balance that roadmap of things that you can execute on, things you should execute on, and of course those client needs that you're so cognizant of?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially because, even our current set of customers have tried to pull us in a lot of different directions. Like, we've started with this like sales and marketing space, but, people have asked me about recruiting, for even sourcing for VCs, for brand monitoring, customer success. There's a lot of different use cases that we can support with Intently, but I think we have to start somewhere, and we picked this specific spot because, especially around go to market, Intently was actually the result of a huge pivot from a previous product I was working on, and so the problem that we are solving with Intently, specifically around go to market, is something that I experienced personally at the last product that I was building, and so we're starting small and we're going to expand from there, and basically now trying to let our users and customers inspire us in terms of like what features we build out next. There's already been several cases we've had about like people coming to us with use cases that we never would have thought of, and so you know yes, there's like a lot of different directions we go, and hopefully long term we can support all of these things. But in terms of like how we prioritize, I would say it just comes down to like what what is the fastest thing that we can build that provides the most value, and what are the most urgent problems that we can solve for people right now. So when I talk to people that are currently using the platform, I try to get a sense of, are they asking me this because it's a nice to have, or are they asking me this because this is a burning problem that they absolutely need solved as soon as possible? And if I can find that burning problem, and I can find that like many people have that problem, that typically makes something a lot more higher priority for me, because then I know there's a market for something, and I know people are ready to pay for it.
Yeah, with your CEO hat on, obviously you're the founder of this company, Anish. What do those client interactions look like? How closely are you communicating with them? How are you soliciting that feedback? Obviously, that's so crucial. I love tools that enable me to work better and work quicker across all of my businesses. I'm not the most vocal customer all of the time. We all get those ambassador scores of how likely are you to rate this tool and recommend it to your friends. I always am amazed at the founders who have that ability to tap into their user base. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it definitely changed over time. So, when I first started Intently, before I actually built anything, I went onto Reddit and I just started talking about what I was trying to build. And I mentioned that I was looking for early design partners. And I had a bunch of people DM me and saying that they were interested in working with me on this, which one was already amazing validation that, I was solving a problem that a lot of people had. And two, it gave me people to work with like right from the beginning. So, they weren't paying me anything at that time. I was just working with them together and trying to figure out how do I solve their problems for them. And so we would get on calls like usually at least once a week. I would show them, all the different updates that I'd made, all the new like Figma designs I'd put together. And we just kind of iterate a lot back and forth on that. And even while we were in private beta, I had like a highlighted like feedback button, which was we still have in the platform, but it was a lot more prominent back then, where I was constantly trying to get people to provide as much feedback as possible before we actually release the product. Nowadays, I still do have design partners, and I still do share some like early mock-ups of things I want to build for people, but it's no longer that like everyone who uses the platform is somebody I chat with now, obviously, because that would just be, way too many people. But I always try to have a set of customers that I work closely with, because there's always going to be more things we're building. And, I don't believe in just building completely blind. I think you should build with your users. And so I've even had really excited customers come back to me with their own sketches about what they would want out of the platform. So I love working with people like that who are, so excited about the potential of the platform that they're actually going to do a little bit of extra work, so that their input is actually reflected in, our work in the platform.
Yeah, I love that. I would imagine there are going to be many Intently ambassadors in the future because it's incredible powers that we can all harness in our own businesses, all in the name of finding the people that we want to serve. That's what I think is so brilliant about your approach, is that we're not finding people to spam. We're not finding people to just blindly outreach to. We're finding people who are already expressing a need themselves. It's not us guessing. So I think there's a lot of powers there. Anish, I knew that time would fly by with you here today. I've been so excited about the business that you've built and how it's empowering all of these businesses that are leveraging it. But before we let you go today, I always ask this big, broad question at the end of every episode, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and knowing that you're one of us, you are a fellow entrepreneur, what's that piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
I would say, and this is probably like advice that people have heard a lot, but I think it's like the one true piece of advice I've heard from so many entrepreneurs. I believe even like YC says this a lot, but it's just talk to your users. You know, even before you start building anything, talk to people, make sure that what you're building is something people actually urgently want. And as you're building, keep talking to your users. Once you've launched, keep talking to your users. Just stay in as close communication with your users and customers as much as possible. And I think that is the way you're going to build a successful business that actually solves people's problems.
Yes, so well said. And I love how much it fits in with so many of the different topics we talked about today. Anish, this is the one episode where I know that people are going to be racing to the show notes to check out those links and find out more about Intently. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
You could sign up at intently.ai.
Super easy. You see intently.ai. We are linking directly to it from the show notes. So if you're on the go, if you're driving, if you're at the gym, no matter where you are, you don't have to remember that link. Just click right on through from the show notes of this episode. Otherwise, Anish, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me.